Alright, let's talk about Loki. First of all, if you have not watched the first two episodes of the Loki show on Disney Plus, don't watch this video and check those out first before watching this, because you're not going to really know what I'm talking about if you haven't seen those episodes. Alright, so check that out on Disney Plus or however way you want to watch it. Loki. Episode 3 is coming up very, very soon. Now, I want to discuss something that has been discussed before. I want to give my thoughts on it, and that is, are the TVA, the Time Variant Authority, are they actually the villains of this show? And is Lady Loki the good guy? So at the end of episode 2, Lady Loki was revealed as being the alternate Loki that they've been hunting. And she set off a bunch of triggers that pretty much created the multiverse. I mean, that's the way I perceived it. And others did too, that the multiverse was created, which is going to lead to all kinds of crazy stuff going on in Marvel for Phase 4 and beyond. So, one thing that I didn't discuss after episode 1, but I did discuss it on a stream I did with Mary Mayhem a few days after that, is this sort of idea or this, the TVA, the concept behind the TVA and how they may not actually be benevolent because... And Jeremy Johns talked about this too in his review for episode 2. The TVA and the Timekeepers in the MCU do kind of come off a bit dictatorish. They will allow certain events to happen regardless of whether or not they affect the timeline. They will allow characters to do things that could negatively affect the timelines and create, multiple timelines and not preserve the sacred timeline because it's something they want. Like for example with the Avengers. Now obviously in the episode they talked about how that was supposed to happen, which is all kinds of weird because what they're basically saying is the Avengers going back in time to do what they did in Endgame was okay with the TVA when it was a very dangerous thing, because what if they did not succeed? Also, and no one's really talked about this, but did people forget that the 2014 version of Thanos that they went back in time to, did people forget? Because I keep seeing comments about, well, they already put the stones back. No. You're not thinking fourth dimensionally, dude. The 2014 version of Thanos went to the future, right? To go fight the Avengers at the end of Endgame, right? And then he lost and he got killed by Tony Stark. That means that in 2014, there's no more Thanos, or any of his minions, or Nebula, or even Gamora. So in 2014, there's no Thanos, and if there's no Thanos in 2014, that's going to create an alternate timeline. Nobody's talked about this, because the Thanos is supposed to be there in 2014, because we know that in 2018 is when he attacks, the Earth to get the stones. That event still has to happen, but if there's no Thanos, he left the timeline and went to the future and got killed there, then that event won't happen in that 2014 timeline, and thus there is an alternate timeline. That's a huge plot hole that nobody's talked about. It ain't just the stones that were affected. It was the characters from the past that are no longer there. You know what I'm saying? And did the TVA authorize that? So the idea of Lady Loki sort of creating chaos is the idea is that they want order. They want there to be order in the multiverse and not have it be a multiverse. But that does sound a bit dictatorship-like. And this whole idea of predestination means that the timekeepers know the beginning, middle, and end of time, and they want things to go their way or else. And to me, that does not seem like a benevolent being would necessarily do that. It's one thing to know what's going to happen. It's something else to interfere in events to make it go the way you think it's going to go. Like, even in episode 1, they were like, well, if you're late for work, and I don't know if that was meant to be a joke. It probably was, but it's like, okay, so if I'm late for work, but I'm not meant to be late for work, that means that I'm going to get deleted? That's weird, man. That doesn't sound like something that a benevolent deity would do. So I could see them being the villains, or maybe they are meant to be good, but they've been corrupted by the other villain, or a villain. People have been talking about Kang the Conqueror, and people like that. It's possible. I'm just giving my thoughts here because I think it's weird that they're talking about predestination in a story where you have time travel. Like the MCU, like we could have a discussion in real life about predestination. We could talk about this. Whether you're religious or not, it could be discussed. And we could have a philosophical debate about it. But in the MCU, we've already seen time travel. We've already seen manipulation of time and matter, and especially in the Marvel comics, even more so. So, it just seems like what Lady Loki's doing, besides kind of creating Phase 4 of the MCU, I mean, that's kind of what's going on, right? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, she's kind of setting the groundwork for what we're going to see in these upcoming movies, is she's kind of bucking the system. And bucking this idea that I have to do what you want me to do. And sort of creating true free will. Because it feels like if there's predestination, you don't have any free will, so you have to do what's intended to you. So every decision made is predestined. Like that basically means that everything Captain America did, the sacrifices that were made in previous MCU movies in the first 3 phases, what happened with Black Widow, what happened with Tony Stark, what happened with Cap's fate at the end of the film, and even what happened in Falcon and Winter Soldier, all of that was meant to happen because the Time Variant Authority authorized it. Then why even risk having any form of time manipulation? Why not have the TVA show up and destroy the time machine the Avengers used? It's weird, man, because you're risking... I mean, look what happened with Thanos. He went to the future. That's a very big risk. You're putting the balance of the universe at risk by having Thanos go to the future and get the stones, you know, from 2014 to 2023, which is when Avengers Endgame takes place after the time skip, after Thor kills the present time Thanos. Right? So it's like they just do what they want. Like, it is a problem, and maybe Lady Loki ends up being the hero here. And ultimately is not a villain like we thought she was. I don't know. What do you think? I mean, the show has some interesting concepts and ideas that I'm going to really think about. And I'm probably going to watch it again soon. I'm probably going to recap. Like, what I'll do is before episode 6, I'll watch episodes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 again. To really, like, in my head, kind of construct this. Because time travel stories are a lot of fun. I love them, but they can get really wild. You know what I'm saying? They can get real thought-provoking and in some ways frustrating when it comes to a logical perspective, but it just depends on the story. And hopefully this is not going to take away from the previous MCU stories or affect Phase 4 going forward and the future of the MCU. What do you think? Let me know. I'll talk to y'all soon.